You're listening to Jet Nation Radio, the official podcast of JetNation.com, the largest independent fan site in the NFL. Be sure to check out our forums and talk all things Jets with thousands of other diehard Jets fans. Now, to get you up to date on all the latest Jets news, notes, and quotes, here are your hosts, Naughton and Alex Varallo.
Good evening, Jets fans. I am Glenn Naughton. This is Jet Nation Radio. Thank you so much for tuning in. Going to have a fun show tonight. I always enjoy this one. I know, Alex, we've done these in the past. We're going to rank the top 20. Sometimes we do top 25. Sometimes we do top 20. We're going to do top 20 this year. Top 20 players with training camp approaching. Before we get into that, though, let's thank our sponsor there, Alex. Jet Nation Radio would like to thank our sponsor, Mile Social, for help managing all the social media platforms for your business. Check out milesocial.com. That's MILE social.com. All right, Alex, how you doing tonight?
I'm doing well. Getting a little bit closer, what would you say, about 13 days before the Jets report to some sort of football camp. I'm not sure what the details are going to entail with how it's all going to play out, but I'm getting excited. You can smell football in the air.
Yeah, I know for me, I missed training camp last year, was expecting to get out there this year. And, man, once this COVID thing hit a couple weeks into it, I thought, you know what, I don't think this thing's going to be cleared up anytime soon. I think I said to the wife when this started, I said, I'm expecting chaos or, at least 6 months of weirdness and a new way of going about our business. That has been the case. What about four months now in the UK? I think we locked down a few weeks before the US did. And my wife and I locked down 10 days before the UK locked down. So, yeah, crazy times. Hate that I'm going to miss camp, but there are obviously more important things going on at the moment. So we'll see. I mean, listen, Alex, we just said, I don't know if it's a rumor. I thought it was confirmed. I saw something a couple days ago. Said no fans for Eagles and Phillies games in Philly. So, I mean, if that's a legitimate thing, will other teams jump on board? I think I saw the Ravens and Patriots both expect to be able to seat at about 20% capacity. So, who knows, man? Who knows what the heck is going to happen? Good news today. I don't know if you saw it, Alex. The company that's working on the vaccine saying they vaccinated 45 people and all 45 of them developed antibodies. And the next phase, they're going to test like 30,000 people this month or something like that. So we'll see. We'll see. Anyway, progress being made on the scientific front. That's about the extent of our conversation on that.
That might change a whole lot of things in a good way for NFL fans.
Yeah, most definitely. And we'll talk a little bit, too, about feels like we have to discuss in some way, shape, or form every week something about Jamal Adams. Now, there were some rumors it was a Seattle Seahawks beat writer, or covers the Seahawks for Sports Illustrated, a writer who tweeted out that the Seahawks were definitely interested in acquiring Jamal Adams from the Jets. And there were some whispers that the 49ers would be looking to do the same. And no expectation at this point from the Dallas Cowboys because of their cap situation. So that's completely understandable. I saw today they've offered Dak $35 million a year, $100 million guaranteed. Don't know if he's going to take that. But actually, Alex, let's start off with the Jamal stuff. I know it's getting a little bit old, but a couple things, as you just said right before we came on the air. Quite surprisingly, 2, 3, 4 guys getting huge contracts, which is really shocking to me. Because as I've said all along, I completely understand Joe Douglas and the Jets looking at this situation and saying, listen, we have no idea what the next year or two is going to bring financially, if the cap is going to go down next year significantly. So I understand not wanting to hand a guy 17, 18, 19, 20 million, depending on what they're looking at. But I saw Derrick Henry got a deal. Didn't see the numbers on that. I literally just saw it 2 seconds ago. Myles Garrett got a million. How much?
I thought I saw $50 million. I don't know what the
even
years were, but I thought I saw $50 million. So it's it's a 4-year deal.
Okay, so that's not 10, 9. Yeah, and you get into the guarantees and all that. But Myles Garrett gets $25 million. Patrick Mahomes, my goodness,
Holy
Patrick
moly.
Mahomes. And then how do you sign Chris Jones to $85 million the next day? Unbelievable. So we'll see what happens with that. I haven't looked at the breakdown of those Chiefs guys, how those deals break down, but give them nearly $600 million in contracts in a week. That's nuts. But yeah, so Mahomes gets a huge deal. Jones gets a huge deal. Myles Garrett gets a huge deal. Earlier in the offseason, Christian McCaffrey got one. There was a little bit more. They wasn't quite as uncertain at that point. But I didn't think we'd see any big contracts with COVID. Some owners obviously feel differently. Does that change the way you feel about Jamal Adams? I'm still in the camp that I like the idea of the Jets being responsible and saying we're planning. If this is in fact the case, of course I'm just speculating. That if the Jets are looking at this and saying we don't know what the cap will be next year, we don't want to hand a guy a $15+ million year contract. But I did see on the forum, if you're not on the forums on JetNation.com, you should get on the forums on the message board. Great banter back and forth on JetNation.com. Check it out. But someone raised a point in a thread and said Jamal Adams, given these contracts that are getting handed out, he would be crazy now to play on his rookie deal. Do you agree with that, or do you think the Jets still are in a position to say we don't want to hand out a huge deal with all the uncertainty?
Yeah, it's interesting. It's a copycat league, and now we're seeing more players starting to get extended before they finish out their rookie deals. So is this the new norm of how players are going to put the squeeze on their teams and the general managers and kind of back them into a corner? Seems to be possibly a new trend that's going to happen here. And you're looking at everything and kind of what Jamal was saying, and a lot of people gave him slack because he name dropped a couple other players, and people were kind of saying you shouldn't ask for money because Mahomes hasn't asked for money, and then a couple weeks later he gets the biggest deal in NFL history. And Myles Garrett, who was pretty much an enemy after that terrible incident where, he swung his helmet at the Pittsburgh Steelers quarterback. I think it was that Mason Rudolph, I want to say.
Yeah, I believe so.
And now he gets $125 million. Running backs don't matter has been the new narrative that I've heard over recent years. And, Zeke Elliott gets a huge deal, I think, about a year ago. Now you got Christian McCaffrey's, one of the higher paid guys or one of the highest paid running backs in the league. Bell got a huge contract last year. Derrick Henry just got a $50 million deal. Like a lot of things narratives seem to be changing, and it's very interesting because don't want to dwell on the COVID situation, but not knowing what the future holds. Seems like these teams are planning, as the show is going to go on. Because why would you commit these kind of mega deals if you didn't have any sort of anticipation of, having the guys play and earn those paychecks? But then again, we have no idea about the language and, if things are to happen and games get suspended or postponed, this and that, how the payments are worked. And I thought I read something about NFL teams exercising, putting players' contract into escrow. So who knows what that's about either. So, clearly these guys have a plan in place for whatever happens. But, specifically with Jamal, and I also heard Justin Simmons, which is one of the top safeties out of Denver and top safeties in the league. So, if he gets a big deal, I think that this just leans more and more toward Jamal's favor in the fact that the Jets are probably going to have to end up either putting a blank check on the table or possibly doing something that a lot of people might have mixed emotions on and, finding a trade suitor. So I kind of feel like with all these deals that are getting thrown around, this is actually working toward Jamal's favor. A couple players spoke out recently in regards to that, which I'm actually very shocked, because normally you don't see other players speaking about other guys' contracts, and who knows what they're allowed to say and what they're not allowed to say. I know during in-season, players are really not allowed to go into in-depth about injuries. Jamal, when he had his high ankle sprain, I'm fine, I'm good, I'll be back 100%. Excuse me. And then at the end of the season, the first opportunity he had to talk about his ankle, he's like, I wasn't the same guy. I wasn't 100%. That was just, a watered-down version of me. So just interesting to see Avery Williamson and Le'Veon Bell in recent interviews within the last 2 weeks come out and say they support Jamal. They understand the business side of this, and, he's playing in a very high elite top level, and the guy deserves to be paid for what he's done thus far. And they bring up a lot of good points. If you look at statistically what Jamal's done, he and J.J. Watt within their first 3 seasons, no one else has as many sacks or pass deflections or, whatever he has for tackles for a loss. So clearly the guy is playing at a level that not a lot of people can replicate. So I kind of feel that this is moving toward his favor. And, like I said, it's a copycat league. So the Jets might have to fold and make a big deal just to, keep this relationship that seems to be tarnished, intact. And, Joe Douglas did tell the world that he had plans of making Jamal a Jet for life. So I guess now we have to see if he's a man of his word. Maybe he didn't mean this year, but that's how everybody took it. So I kind of have a feeling that maybe there is a universe where we will see 33 playing for New York this year.
Yeah, I think with the Joe Douglas thing, that was a point I've made that a few times about how he said he wants to make Jamal a Jet for life, but he didn't put a time frame on it, like the fans did. Fans that wanted Jamal Adams signed tomorrow took it to mean as I'm going to sign Jamal tomorrow. And when Joe Douglas didn't sign him tomorrow, they were like, oh, Jamal is right to be pissed off because they said they were going to sign him tomorrow and they didn't. Like, no, they said they were going to sign him. You see these deals happening now. And I said this last time we discussed this. Maybe the Jets, maybe their plan was let's run our off season. Let's get our rookies into camp. Let's get our rookies signed, and then we'll take care of Jamal. And it wasn't happening at the pace Jamal wanted, so he's, done whatever he's done. But one thing to keep in mind, Alex, you say we'll find out if Joe Douglas is a man of his word. I can tell you right now, like Joe Douglas, Adam Gase, like head coaches, GM, none of them are men of their word. But from what they tell the media, but they're going to tell the media what they feel. They're going to get the message out there that they would like to have out there. If Adam Gase and Joe Douglas are sitting at one Jets drive, and I'm not saying that this is what's going on, but they could be sitting there saying, do either one of us want to pay a safety $19 million, or do we feel like we can get an adequate replacement and use those resources elsewhere? Yeah, let's do that. And by the way, maybe get a couple premium picks for Jamal Adams in a trade. Sure, let's do that. Okay, so you go out, you tell the media, we'd love to have Jamal signed for life. You leave out the part where you say we're not in any rush to do it, and if someone makes us a trade offer we like, then we'll pull the trigger. It's not like, what is it? Lying by omission, right? Like, we didn't say we weren't going to trade him. We just said we would like him to be a Jet for life. We didn't say when the deal was going to be made. We didn't say when an offer was going to be made. We didn't say we wouldn't trade him if someone made us an offer we liked. So it leaves every door open, but it gives the public, impression that, we want to keep Jamal. And I've said a million times, Jamal's a fantastic player. I guess I feel like it's, unless Joe Douglas completely drops the ball and trades Jamal and doesn't get fair compensation, I think that's the only way they lose in this situation. If you keep Jamal, you've retained a great player. If you get fair market value, then you're getting multiple premium picks that if Joe Douglas is as good as we hope he is, that's, a couple starting players. So, yes, Joe Douglas said he would sign him. No, he didn't say when. And these guys are not beholden. I always give the example because it's probably one of my earliest recollections and how quickly it turned around when the Jets acquired Curtis Martin from the Patriots, they still had Adrian Morrell on the roster, who had just had himself a really nice year. And Bill Parcells was asked, what do you do now that you have Morrell and Curtis Martin? And Parcells said, look, we're in a great position now. Now we have a really impressive stable of running backs. I forget who the third back was at the time. And it may have been longer, but it feels like about 48 hours later, Adrian Morrell was traded. Like, Bill Parcells knew he was unloading Adrian Morrell. These guys know what their plans are, and they just say what sounds nice publicly, and then they, things play out how they play out. But I do think it's interesting that these deals are being given out, because honestly, I didn't see it coming. I really thought teams, were going to sit back and say, until we have some more answers on COVID, we're not giving out any huge contracts. And it's been quite the opposite. And so we'll see how it plays out. It should get interesting. But let's get into, Alex, let's do our top 20. All right, we thought, like I said, kicked around, do we do 20, do we do 25? But we're going to go ahead, do top 20 players. We'll go back and forth. I'll go with you can kick us off with your number 20, and then we'll just go back and forth and give our thoughts on why we have guys where we have them, and just kind of elaborate a little bit. So who's your 20th guy, Alex?
Okay, starting it off with a new addition wide receiver, Bashad Perimen. I think just the way that this roster is panning out, not a massive amount of talent, and it's interesting that he kind of makes the cut here inside the top 20.
Yeah, I mean, Perimen, listen, he's a guy that we've talked about quite a bit. The way he finished up strong last season, I've seen a lot of people say he's a one-trick pony, he's the go route, kind of the same stuff we heard about Robbie. But I disagree, though. I think he does more than people give him credit for. I've got him on mine. He's a little higher than 20, but he is at the bottom end. But my number 20 is a guy, and I struggled with the bottom because there are a few guys that you kind of flip back and forth. This guy belongs, that guy belong. But I went with a guy who's not even really a starter, but based on his production based on the number of snaps he played, I couldn't leave Kyle Phillips off my list. He's going into year 2, undrafted free agent out of the University of Tennessee, and was one of the top defenders in the NFL in terms of tackles for loss, despite being a part-time guy. And I really liked what I saw from him, and I think that going into year 2, I'm excited about this D-line. We'll talk about a few of these D-linemen, but Kyle Phillips, probably the most underrated, underappreciated guy who for me belongs in that top 20. Who you got at 19, Alex?
Okay, we're going with another wide receiver here, and this is our second-round draft pick, Denzel Mims. I think that this year he's outside the top 10, but I can foresee him within a year or two cracking inside the top 10. Super talented. I think this guy's barely scratched the surface, and if everything goes according to plan, I think we're going to be very, very happy with having a kind of catching lightning in a bottle here with Mims. Big fan over here, so don't prove me wrong, Denzel.
Yeah, I think he's a guy who's, obviously has the ability to be a dynamic playmaker. I'm kind of expecting big things from him. And as I say all the time, when we talk about these expectations, we're talking about, assuming guys stay healthy, assuming none of the key guys miss significant time. I feel like if everyone on offense stays healthy for the most part, I think Mims is going to be in position to have himself a really nice season. Again, probably just top to bottom in terms of what he brings to the table, has the ability to be the best receiver Darnold has played with. So we'll see how that works out in year 1. My number 19 is a guy who probably would have been a top 10 for me last year and was almost out of my top 20 this year. I flipped him and Phillips a couple times, but I'm counting on a bounce back year from Henry Anderson. And if someone leaves him off the list, I can completely understand. He was not anywhere near the player last year that he was the year before. But just based on the fact that I think he's going to have a nice bounce back season, he kind of has to. If the Jets can cut him with no cap hit and save $9 million going into next year, so he's got to play lights out if he wants that money. I honestly don't see him playing well enough to earn that $9 million. and I don't think he'll be a Jet after this year. But I think with that $9 million on the line and with getting some pieces back on defense, I think we're going to see a big year out of Henry Anderson. And he cracks my top 20. He's at number 19. Who do you got at 18, Alex?
All right, at 18, I'm going with Greg Van Roten, our new offensive lineman. I have a strong feeling that he is going to win the right guard position. It's just an early prediction that I have here. I think the only guy that's standing in his way right now is veteran Brian Winters. And at the end of the day, if he doesn't end up, winning a offensive line job, then possibly it'll be between him and Alex Lewis for that left guard spot. Only time will tell. But I do feel that as far as the collective group that we have with his experience, that is going to weigh heavy into the factor of putting out the best five. We know about Winter's injury history, so I just kind of feel that GVR is going to have a big role with this front five this year.
Yeah, he's an underrated signing, I think. I've heard a lot of people refer to him, he's a backup player. He's not really that good. I feel like he's, early on in his career he was, but he did earn himself a starting spot with Carolina before getting injured. And I kind of felt the same way. I thought Brian Winters wouldn't be a Jet right now. The fact that the Jets have allowed him to hang around makes me wonder if they really do like him enough to win that spot. But if GVR can win that spot, that would be nice. Doesn't have as many miles as Winters does. And let's face it, as much as you love Brian Winters, the person, the toughness and all that, he just hasn't been very good for a few years now, which is a shame. So if GVR can step up and take that job, that would be, I don't think anybody would have a problem with that. For me, I'm going on the offensive line here as well, and I'm going with our guy Becton. Could have gone higher. I always have a really hard time, Alex. And
are we on 17 or 18?
17. I'm sorry, no. This is 18 for me. Phillips, Anderson.
I skipped one. I also have Mekhi Becton at 18 because he's a mammoth of a man. So I guess my 17 is GVR. So
gotcha. Okay, so you have Becton and GVR. I'll go ahead and give my 18 and 17 then. So 18 Becton. We know the hype, we know the size, we know the film. We're watching them ragdoll defenders. That won't be the case. Exactly. That you don't expect that to be the case at the pro level, but you do expect him to be a damn good player at the 11th overall pick, given the physical tools. So I've got Becton there at 18, and then at 17, I've got Denzel Mims. Denzel Mims, who I talked about just a minute ago. Not really a lot more to say there. Young, explosive guy, great vertical, can high point the ball, and just a guy who should be able to make explosive plays for this offense for years to come, or at least that is the hope. So the Jets' first and second rounders are my 18 and 17 with Becton and Mims.
Okay, so we already know who my 17 is, GVR, so that brings us to number 16. And this one here, kind of ironic how last year I had predicted that he was going to be a practice squad player and outside the top 53, and he had a phenomenal defensive year. And if you haven't figured it out yet, I'm talking about Foloronzo Fatukasi. You want to talk about somebody that can pretty much stop the run, plug the gap, make running backs' lives extremely difficult. That's exactly what Foley did last year. He was a tone setter, and I think a lot of the things that he did in the interior aspect of the defense opened up plays for, other guys out there. And I think that under Greg Williams, I think that he's only going to continue to improve his play.
Yeah, he's a guy that, these inside guys don't get enough credit. I actually tweeted out earlier today. I saw Seth Walder, I believe, who used to cover the Jets beat, put up a number saying he'd just seen that the Jets defense against the run was number one in the NFL in some, I don't even recall the metric, but he was kind of shocked. Like, I can't believe that's the case. And I just I said, look, these guys, because there are no stats or points for it in fantasy football, people aren't aware of guys like Fatukasi, like Nathan Shepard, who had a really good year, like Steve McClendon, even Quinn Williams. But these guys don't get enough credit. They're a really good group, and Fatukasi is, to me, that guy was an absolute beast this year. So I don't see how he won't make a huge leap going into next year. And I know that for me personally, he's one of the young guys I'm excited about watching. And I've got, let's see, so we're up to 17 now, 16.
Correct.
Yeah, so my 16 is I'm going with Perimen. You had him a little lower on the list. I'm going with him here. And his strong finish to the season last year, his explosiveness, I think that he's going to be a guy who is going to give some guys some room to work with underneath. Everyone says, well, he put up those numbers because, he played in Tampa where they had so many weapons. Look, a lot of guys got hurt. He became the top guy for the last few weeks of the season and averaged around 100 yards a game over the last 4 or 5 games of the season. So you hope it's not a flash in the pan. Jets only brought him in on a 1-year deal, so there's not a huge commitment there. But I think that he's a guy who can be a big difference maker on offense.
Okay, so we're moving to 15. And
yep.
Some people get this reference. A lot of people may not understand what I'm about to say here, but this is the six-finger man, somebody that might have been forgotten in some people's minds. And that is our tight end, Chris Herndon. Now, the reason why I call him the six-finger man is he was born with actually 6 fingers, and he had to have one of them amputated when he was a young kid. So that's why I read that story a long time ago. I think it was Olivia Landis that was doing the interview and kind of broke the story on that one. But, I really feel that even though he missed out pretty much all of last year due to a stupid mistake his rookie year, getting a DWI after the draft, and then after he completed his suspension, he immediately got hurt the Friday before he was about to get activated, doing like gassers, sprinting and trying to work on his conditioning. I believe he tweaked a hamstring, so he missed some more time. And when he did get activated, I don't think he made it through that first game that he played for. He got injured very early in that first half, and we didn't.
Yeah, he played against the Giants. He had 1 catch.
Yep, he got pretty gnarly hit too, and then that was it. So, I remember the connection that him and Sam had on the back end of their rookie year. There was some chemistry there. He became this guy that was someone that you had to keep an eye on in the red zone. He was getting open underneath and in between that linebacker and safety area. And, a lot of people, the way that they run their defense is sometimes they'll let the tight end go out and see what they can do because, there's not a lot of superb, crazy athletic tight ends out there that are doing stuff that like George Kittle and Kelsey are doing. So, I kind of feel that we have somebody here with a lot of potential. If he stays healthy this year, and that's one of the key factors, I really think that Chris Herndon is going to help this offense, get out from the 32nd ranked in 2019.
All right, and I'm going up. I've got my number 15 is a guy we did talk about in Foley Fatukasi. That's where I have him. I think if you're every down player, I might even put him higher on that list. But I think we know that he won't be. He'll be a rotational guy, but he's going to be a big part of what they do. And it's those big guys up front that allow the linebackers, that allow a guy like Jamal Adams to come up when he's in the box to make plays in the backfield. And you just watch him last year, that game against the Giants, he looked absolutely fantastic. Saw him get quite a few plays where he was able to just move the center of the guard back into the pocket, put a guy on skates, and little things like that don't show up in the box score, but you see a quarterback's rhythm getting thrown off by the things he was doing. So super unappreciated guy. I remember his rookie year, seeing him at camp and coming on and saying that I wasn't sure how good he was going to be, but I just said the guy was as strong as an ox. Like his strength was so evident, the way he was able to hold his ground and or move guys around in one-on-one drills and practice. So nice to see him coming along and really just comes across as a good dude, like hard not to root for kind of guy. So I've got Foley Fatukasi at my 15, and Alex, that brings us to your 14.
Okay, so this is going to big baby Quinn Williams. Last year he had a rough year, early ankle injury. I think it slowed him down big time. Greg Williams recently had an interview about a week or two ago, probably about 2 weeks ago, and he kind of made his rounds talking about all these players. And one of the things he emphasized on is the difference of how much that set him back and it slowed him down. And he thinks that, he's going to come back this year focused, hopefully healthy, and really, really show all the fans the reason why he was a top 3 selection in his draft class. The interesting thing is when the Jets were playing at that elite level defensively between that, November to December period, guys like Foley and Quinnen and Kyle Phillips and McClendon, these were the guys that were just dominating up front and winning in the trenches. So I have a feeling that this year, he's another one of those players that seems to find himself outside the top 10 this year, but I could see him being in the top 10 next year if all goes to plan.
All right, and I've got in that same spot, I've got a guy again, another player looking for a bounce back season, a guy who, if he's healthy, could be a top 10 guy on this roster, but he's coming off of a down year. But Pierre Desir, and he's one of the biggest keys on this defense, because let's face it, the Jets need a legitimate number 1 corner, and whether or not Desir can be that, he did at times a couple of years ago look like that's what he could be, but struggled quite a bit last season. And, he's one of those guys, I think I mentioned earlier in the offseason, Alex, as much as we've talked about liking the fact that that Joe Douglas went out and got a lot of guys who were like sort of, low risk, high reward on 1-year deals. Desir's the biggest one that jumps out to me, because I just look at him and I think, for as well as he played 2 years ago, and the fact that he plays a premium position, how in the world was there not a team willing to give him a little bit more than what the Jets gave him? It really surprised me how little they paid to get a guy who was very highly thought of just 2 seasons ago. So I have Desir up there and hoping for a bounce-back season for him.
Okay, and we're at number 13 now?
Correct.
Okay, so we're going with the legendary future Hall of Famer, Frank Gore. What hasn't this guy done? He's had a phenomenal career. I think he's going to be a leader for our running backs, and I think he's going to be an asset as far as getting some guys familiar with blocking schemes and, pass blocking, specifically. I know it seems kind of odd of what could he do to teach Le'Veon Bell, but I'm pretty sure a guy with this track history in the NFL can teach Bell a thing or two. And I think he could probably give, certain players a better understanding of this Rubik's Cube of an offensive playbook that Adam Gase has put together. So, he may not be the 25-year-old version dominator running back that he used to be, but I think a guy that can come in the pinch, you really can't find anybody that's done it better than him throughout his career. Just a stand-up guy, and I think that he's going to be a quality asset to this locker room.
All right, and that's in that same spot. I've got a guy you already have. I've got him a little higher on my list, Quentin Williams. But Quentin Williams, I'll tell you what, he's a guy that if he has the type of year I'm expecting from him this year, then he'll be on this. He'll be top 3 or 4 on this list next year. I think he has that much talent. I think he's that good. And the thing I love about Quentin Williams is just the demeanor. He's just like he's out there having fun. He does interviews. He's having fun. He's playing football. He's having fun. Comes across as just a down-to-earth team guy. So he's a dude that, again, kind of along the lines earlier, I was saying Foley Fatukasi, hard guy not to root for. And I really do think that, you look at the work he's putting in this offseason, he did need to get stronger. It looks like he's doing that. And I'll tell you what, man, people who are down on Quinn Williams, I mean, you talk about jumping ship too early on a guy. I think he's going to be special, and I think that we're going to see some of that this year out of him. And, he's one of those guys where if he plays to that potential and a guy like Desir stays healthy and, a guy who, of course, we'll mention later in Mosley, these guys stay healthy, this defense has an opportunity to be special, and he could be a big part of that.
Definitely. Are we up to 12 now?
Indeed, number 12.
Okay, great. I guess this is the leadership segment here because I'm going with Steve McClendon here at number 12. You and I have talked about this guy at length. Regardless of, what you look at when you're observing his stats, what he does, keeping this locker room in check, and then going out there and keeping the intensity on defense where it needs to be. Steve McClendon, I wish he started out as a Jet because I feel like our defense might have been better in some of those rough years that we had. But, I'm glad he came to us when he did, and I think one of the best moves that the Jets could have made within the last year or two was keeping this guy around. He's getting a little bit older, but, fortunately for him, he's got a good group of guys that he can rotate with and stay fresh all season.
All right, for my next player is going to be a guy that you did mention, and to me, and you may have seen, I tweeted this the other day, Alex. Assuming the O-line stays healthy, I know the blocking's got to be there, but to me, the single most important player on offense behind Sam Darnold, Chris Herndon. You talked about him earlier. You look at what teams are doing right now. You look at and this is why part of the reason why I say that all this talk about how you have to have a number one receiver, I believe, is overrated, especially this day and age. You saw the Eagles win the Super Bowl a couple of years ago. Leading receiver was Zach Ertz. The Chiefs last year, of course, were a little bit of an anomaly because they have a quarterback who can throw the ball a mile and a track team lining up at wide receiver, but Kelsey was still a huge part of that. You look at the Patriots were able to do with Gronk. And I'm not putting Herndon on that level. I'm just saying if you have a high-level tight end, you've got to have that in today's NFL to win football games, a guy who can create mismatches. And Herndon is a guy, he can block plenty. So you can line him up in line, you can line him up in the slot, you can line him up at H-back, which we saw a little bit of that. So Herndon is a guy who you can move around. He can catch the football. He can make plays with the ball in his hands. He can be a blocker, basically an every down guy, not a liability in any way. And if he's making plays in the middle of the field, defense is going to have to respect that, and that's where things get a little bit easier for a guy like Denzel Mims, who's coming into his first year, and even a guy like Perimen. So I think Herndon becomes the key this season on offense for the Jets. If he's healthy, I think they have a chance to be really good on offense. Of course, depending on other factors, but I think he is the biggest key to the offense behind Sam Darnold, of course.
Okay. So before I get into my number 11 here, I just want to validate your point because all these people that seem to they seem to think, and I feel like this is a Madden statement here, Sam Darnold needs a number one wide receiver. He needs the next Julio Jones, this, that. Okay. The Kansas City Chiefs just won a Super Bowl last year where their top wide receiver, who apparently is Tyreek Hill, who has been primarily known or called a gadget player, is a burner, had 58 receptions and 860 yards. His number one receiving guy was their tight end, Travis Kelce, with 1,200 yards and 7 TDs, I believe, or 5 TDs, sorry. So that just proves it right there. If you have a quality, good tight end, a strong running game, and a quarterback that can make plays, kind of like Sam Darnold can do, you can negate that number one wide receiver factor. And, look at the Chiefs as a great example for that. But,
and the fact that they could be special with not to cut you off, Alex, but staying on that tight end thing, like a guy like Griffin, he had himself a really nice season. And that was as the number one. You move him to be your number two and pair him with Herndon. that's going to give you some options on offense. That's why, I'm in the sort of no excuses for Gase camp, because you may not have a number one receiver, but you've got, when you talk about Griffin, Herndon, if you want to move Le'Veon Bell out of the backfield and line him up at receiver, Jameson, Crowder, you've got, Perimen and Mims. They have to be solid. That's it. And then you've got 3, 4, 5 other guys who really could be legitimate targets. And I'm sure Vincent Smith won't make our lists, but he's a guy that I look at and I'm like, this guy might be something here. And I think the Jets do have some high hopes for him. So I like the targets on offense more than most people do.
Yeah, give me 4 or 5 twos rather than one big one wide receiver 1 and then a bunch of guys that should be like wide receiver 4 or 5. I'll take those kind of players all day long. And like you said, if this all works out according to plan, if you have, deep threats on the outside in Mims and Perimen, guys like Bell and Herndon and Crowder are going to see lots of targets in open space, in that medium area, in those medium zones. And that's kind of where Sam Darnold has done some of his best work. So, yeah, I'm all about that philosophy of you need to have that number one guy like an Odell Beckham and things like that. I think there's ways that you can work around that and still be successful.
Absolutely.
All right, so going to my number 11 here, somebody that you mentioned not too long ago. I'm going to put in Pierre Desir here. This is not a all-world talent at cornerback here, but we clearly know with the past few seasons that we've had, it's been pretty brutal. Tremaine Johnson didn't work out. Darryl Roberts just, always seemed to punish himself and the team by, creating late penalties. And, that's the funny thing is that the guy could play 99 snaps on defense, and the one snap that he makes a mistake on is the one that costs us big. So hopefully this year, with his experience, we find some more quality play on the outside. And with better coverage, a lot of good things can come from better coverage on the outside. More sacks, less opportunities for the quarterback. You're going to have to force the ball into tougher windows. You can create more turnovers. A lot of good things can happen when you've got quality outside corner play. And that's what I'm anticipating with Pierre Desir this year.
All right, so that brings me to my 11, and it's one of my favorites, a guy who you did mention, Steve McClendon. Middle of that defense, to me, I know all the talk is about Jamal being the leader of this defense. For my money, if I'm running a team and I can choose between a Jamal Adams and a Steve McClendon to lead my team, give me Steve McClendon every time. And I've seen him, somebody said to me one time, he's too quiet. He doesn't say enough. And I say, listen, man, just because he doesn't talk on Twitter doesn't mean he doesn't talk. That's one of the things I've enjoyed about being at camp, the years I've been able to get there the last couple of years, is Steve McClendon. A couple times I've seen him stop a practice, call everybody in, and just, put a boot in somebody's ass. And Steve McClendon will not hesitate to get in somebody's face and tell them they're not getting the job done. So he might be the mild-mannered guy, when he's talking to the media, at his locker, on a radio interview, ultimate professional, pro's pro, quiet guy, love it, knows how to conduct himself. On the field, totally different story. If something needs to be said or done, he'll say it or do it. And the guy just outplays his contract, outperforms, what most people expect of him. He's a guy that not a lot of people talk about. I've been saying for years, from the year they signed him, his first season with the Jets, every week, I was like, this guy's so underrated. This guy's he doesn't get enough credit. But it's every year, PFF, man, he's a guy who ranks a lot higher than if you ask the average fan, I think they'd be surprised to see how well he grades out. And if you watch him on film, you see why. And like I said, leads on the field, a professional when he deals with the media. Just he's the type of guy I want. I don't need the flamboyant, loud guy who's kind of comes across as being a little bit more about himself than the team. To me, McClendon, ultimate pro, love him. I've said a million times, I hope the second he retires, the Jets give him a deal to bring him on the staff as a coach.
Absolutely. I think that he would be a phenomenal addition. Jets have kind of had some really, really good quality, experienced guys, player coaches that they've brought in throughout the last couple of years to help players along. And, definitely like the fact that Hines Ward now seems to have a place in our in our locker room. And definitely you got to get Steve involved. I know they have Brick in there. They got Calvin Pace up in there. So a lot of good things. And I definitely would love to see him, continuing to help these guys like Quinn Williams and Foley, when he decides to hang up his hat. That definitely should be in the plan. Okay. So I guess we're inside our top 10 now. All right, great.
We are.
All right, so to kick off number 10, I'm going to have to go with Brian Poole, somebody that, we were really kind of unsure of last year going into camp. We saw some things with him at free safety, kind of like a dime cornerback, kind of had a little bit of nickel presence when he was playing in Atlanta. He got his opportunity, I believe, when one of their premier safeties, I want to say Keanu O'Neal, had gotten hurt, and he had to kind of step up and be the next man up, and this is why he's on our team. He played well enough to get himself a show-me kind of deal last year, and you have to say they were probably one of the best free agent acquisitions that we made was Brian Poole last year. And it was kind of interesting how we only did the 1 year. I think it was, $4 to $5 million he got for this year. Would have thought the Jets might have done something 2 to 3 years. But when you have a group like that with May and Adams, you have Poole. We're anticipating, a big step up from Bless Austin this year. And then you bring in a guy like Desir, as a collaborative group, that could end up being something really, really solid for this defense. And, that could possibly be one of the stronger defensive back groups in the AFC. So he's a big guy as far as, helping in the run. He had some turnovers. He had a defensive touchdown last year. You just saw him make plays week in and week out. And, that's why we brought him back this year. And I hope that, he can do exactly what he did last year and maybe a little bit more.
All right. In that spot, I've got Jordan Jenkins, a guy who led the team in sacks and then went into free agency. I was way off the mark. I honestly thought that given his production and the lack of pass rushers in the NFL, I thought he would get a $10 million a year deal. He didn't get anywhere near that. Nobody, the Giants sniffed around a little bit. He ended up coming back to the Jets for a few million on a 1 year deal. Hope he has himself a big season. He's a guy, he's strong against the run. Now, he'll get, if he's going to get you 8 sacks, maybe he gets you 10 one day. He's not a Von Miller type. He's not blowing past anybody, but the effort is there, the constant effort, high character guy. So he's a guy that, I don't think the 8 sacks isn't the traditional sort of, pass rush specialist type. But he is a guy who, with enough effort, he'll make some plays. And I think that he's a guy who's going to be playing with a little bit of a chip on his shoulder this year after not getting the deal he wanted. So that brings us to your 9. And we may have to speed it up, Alex, because time flies when you're having fun. We got about 12 minutes left on the air here.
Oh, okay. So let's kick in the lightning round. So my number 9 is your number 10, Jordan Jenkins. Basically everything that you said. I think that if it wasn't for his early injury that he had in September and October that kind of slowed him down, and I think he missed a game or two, if I'm not mistaken, I really feel that he would have had double-digit sacks last year. And if you go and you look at that stretch where Jamal had a sack for 3 weeks in a row, if you noticed who the guy was right there that could have beat him there, was about a half a second off, that was Jordan Jenkins. And I think he made a comment after one of his games, and he said, well, it's all good, but he keeps stealing my sacks. But, I'm happy for him. I think that was kind of what he had said in a joking manner. But, yeah, Jordan was playing at a very, very high level within certain weeks of last year. And I'm going to pound the table here, and I'm going to think he cracks 10 sacks this year.
Yeah, I think I predicted that for him last year. and came up short, as you said, missed a couple games, finished with 8 sacks. Would love to see him get a 10-sack season. We'll see how that pans out. My next guy, number 9, is Marcus May, entering the final year of his rookie deal. Seemed a little bit miffed a couple weeks ago when he was getting all of a sudden he was everyone's favorite Jet safety because of the Jamal Adams issue. But again, quiet pro, goes about his work, lets his play do his talking for him. And as much as, and I said this a million times last year, I felt like the injury-prone label was unfair to him. The guy's been in the league 3 years. He's played every single game 2 of the 3 years, and I still hear people say he's made out of glass because he missed some time in year 2. He missed a lot of time in year 2, granted. But you know what? It's the NFL. Guys get hurt. He's played 16 out of 16 games 2 out of 3 years. In my book, that is not injury-prone, and he'll be playing for his new deal. So could be a big year for Marcus May. Who do you got next, Alex? You're number 8.
Okay. This is one of Sam Darnold's go-to guys, Jameson Crowder. Really had a good season for himself. After being injured the year before and only participating in 9 games, I believe, he did a full 16 for us. And he played phenomenal. He was, at week 1, how many catches did he have? Like 15 or something crazy like that?
It was 14, yeah.
14, something like that, yeah.
But of course, in typical Jet style, I believe it was the most catches a player's ever had without breaking 100 yards.
Yes, there you go. Only the Jets.
Even when the Jets do something impressive, they screw it up.
100%. So, yeah, I'm expecting another, repeat year of just quality play from him. When 82 is out on the field, number 14 has got eyes on him, and I think that that's a great connection, and I think that's going to build this year as well.
All right, my next guy is a guy you've already covered, Brian Poole, corner, slot guy. Another guy that I thought would, coming off the year he had, I expected him to kind of command 8, 9, 10 million. Came back again, 1-year deal, short deal. If he plays that well again, I could see him getting a multi-year contract. So here's to hoping he does that again. And we should be up to your 7, Alex.
Number 7. Okay, we're going with All Day May. Really, really great season for the guy. He defied that injury bug that everybody likes to talk about. Very, very highly rated and talked about on a PFF status. The guy may not show, 6-7 interceptions like some other, ball hawk center fielders, but I just kind of feel that he's a stand-up guy, and the way he played down the stretch last year, I think we can all say that, one of the main reasons why we won that game against Pittsburgh was because of his quality coverage down the stretch.
Yeah, he made some big plays in that game.
He made some really, really big plays. So hoping that, Marcus May, playing for a contract year, hopefully we see, the best of the best out of him.
All right, and moving to the offensive line, for me, Connor McGovern, center. He's a guy that should finally bring some stability to that position after some disastrous seasons following the retirement of Nick Mangold. Wesley Johnson bombed, Spencer Long bombed, and Ryan Khalil may have been worse than all of them. So now you bring in McGovern, and I think fans are, he is a welcome sight, a capable center who shouldn't be, the liability that the last 3 or 4 guys were. Who you got next, Alex?
Okay, so my number 6 is your number 7, Connor McGovern. Like you said, he's going to get it all together for us and keep Sam upright. And I don't know specifically what the stats are, but I know that he was one of the least penalized centers in the last 2 years. I'm hoping that he continues that quality play. We need to get smarter. We need to get better up front. And I think that all starts with Connor.
All right, and I've got at my number 6, Avery Williamson, linebacker, inside linebacker, coming back off an injury, missed the entire season. Another player that I really thought would be out on the street, or with another team, I should say, by this point, given the fact that he's due to make $6.5 million, and the Jets could save every penny of that. I really thought, Alex, and this is something we'll talk about in a later show, and I'll move along here because we're down to about 6 minutes. But I thought that having a lack of a preseason, or not a real preseason, I think the Jets maybe wanted to use the preseason to showcase Williams and maybe deal him. But that obviously won't be happening, or it's very unlikely it'll happen now, which is good because I want to see Mosley and Williams or Williamson every down for a full season. I think they can be dominant. Who was your number 5?
My number 5 is your number 6, Avery Williamson. Everything you said and then some. Hopefully that he has a bounce back year after that knee injury, and we could just build on what we had last year as far as having that dominant up front in the trenches. So I think Williamson can only help us improve on that.
All right, my number 5, a guy you've already talked about, Jameson Crowder. I think he had his best year as a pro last year. I think he can, will those numbers be the same this year? Tough to say, because if Herndon's healthy, if Griffin's healthy, if Perimen and Mims are, chemistry, that's going to mean, Sam Darnold's going to have more viable targets than he had last year. So that may see a reduction for Crowder. But maybe that chemistry and Adam Gase's play calling, we do know that Gase likes, Gase will often call plays, the intermediate stuff. Not to say they don't throw the ball deep as well, but Gase does like the intermediate stuff. Darnold does have some chemistry with Crowder, so that could lead to another big year for him.
Okay, so my number 4 coming up here is our signal caller, Sam Darnold. Soon to be the number 1 player, I would hope, within the next year or two. Sam's got nothing but the whole world ahead of him here. Had a really, really rough fault last year with the mono and all the just nagging little injuries he had. But the kid's tough as nails and definitely deserves to be inside the top 5 for this team.
And same for me, Sam Darnold, number 4. So I'm guessing we've got the same 3 players in the top 3. It's just a matter of whether or not we have them in the same order. I've got Bell, Mosley, Adams, the 3-2. What do you have, Alex?
I have Mosley, Bell, and Adams. So we almost had it right. I think we were kind of close on our top 20 this year. What was the difference we had here? You had Kyle Phillips?
I had Phillips 20? And Henry Anderson, and it looks like you had GVR right. And Frank Gore.
Okay. All right. So there's
Gore, to me, I considered Gore, but looking at his numbers over the second half last year, I know he brings leadership and all that, but I think he was at like 2.6 or under 3 yards a carry in the second half last year. So did Father Time catch up with him? Perhaps. But we'll see. As I said, I wasn't happy when they made that move. And I said it at the time, has nothing to do with the person. Love Frank Gore, love the work ethic, love the example he'll set, love having a guy like that in the locker room. But for a 37-year-old back at 3 yards a carry over the second half of the season, I just wondered if that roster spot could be used more wisely and let some other guys do the leading. But, it is what it is. That rounds out our top 20, and those are the 2 differences. You didn't have Kyle Phillips or Henry Anderson. I did not have GVR or Frank Gore. The other 18 matched. Our top 4 were identical, with the exception of you having Bell 2, Mosley 3. I had Mosley 2, Bell 3. We both had Adams 1. We both had Darnold 4. And that'll wrap things up for us this week. Alex, you got anything else for us?
Hey, just, another great week. Excited to see what Le'Veon Bell kind of threw out there this week. He pinned up the Madden rating, and he's using that as, fuel for his fire this year. He looks to be in great shape, and I'm really, really looking forward to seeing a rejuvenated Le'Veon Bell this season. So let's go.
All right, Alex, thanks so much for tuning in, Jets fans. We will catch you back here again next week. Have a good one.